Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there, so please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money, so check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall, and I'm just going to use this time to have a little bit of a brag that only matters to, like, you know, some people out there that are into this kind of thing. Oh. So it was my birthday
right.
between the last episode and this episode.
And that, Niall, is a great brag to start the episode off on. Happy birthday. I wished you a happy birthday on the actual day, but let's do an official podcast happy birthday. So happy birthday to Niall.
Much like a relationship isn't official until you put it on Facebook, now a happy birthday isn't official until you record it on a podcast.
Exactly.
So you now are canonically the only person to wish me happy birthday. Officially.
Canonically, officially. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I just want to say also congrats on double digits. This is a great time for that.
Yeah, finally hit double digits. But the actual brag was that my brother got me so I'm now the proud owner of the Hellraiser quadrilogy box set.
Nice.
That has a 300-page hardbound book in it. And I'm so excited to dig into I guess what people would consider the Hellraiser movies worth watching. I at one point a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, aka high school and Columbus, Indiana, I did watch the first 5 or 6 Hellraiser movies, and I've seen the first one many times. I love the first movie. I think it's
a classic.
An all-time great horror classic. But I am looking forward to revisiting 2 through 4, reading some behind the scenes stuff, because I've become a bit of a Clive Barker head. I'm also gonna try to get into reading some of his books, you know, and of course, like most people, when I say I'm a fan of Clive Barker, I mean the 3 feature films he's directed.
Sure. Yeah.
And that is my main extension with Clive Barker. I keep wanting to say Clive Cussler because my parents read Clive Cussler books growing up, so that name is just intrinsically tied. Along with my mom read that book series. There was The Cat Who blank yada yada yada. That are mysteries. There's 150 of them.
I sort of remember these. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so those things are just imprinted. But yeah, Hellraiser. I'm a horror box. I'm a devoted and pronounced horror box set fan, and very excited to add this beautiful fucking 4K Hellraiser quadrilogy to my collection.
No, that's awesome. Isn't that the one that comes with an actual Pandora's box that will summon the Cenobites if you solve it?
No, there is what is it? The Lamont configuration. I always forget what the actual thing is, but no, there is that box, but this isn't that. This is just has a really nice hard shell box with lathe cut stuff in it, and it's kind of sick as fuck.
I mean, I would just be so tempted to try and solve Pandora's box and ultimately have my flesh ripped from my body.
I mean, you're big into hooks. You like a hook.
Yeah, I'm always talking. Now, to be fair, I was talking about storytelling hooks when I said that to you.
Oh,
but I didn't specify.
I thought it was your pronounced love of Hook by Blues Traveler.
Honestly, it's all of the above.
A hook is a hook is a hook.
A hook is a hook is a hook. I'm always saying that shit. And before we get into the hook of this episode, I do want to talk about something real quick. Okay. So mutual friend of our show, Riley, He was actually, I was just looking at this. I'd completely forgotten. Our friend Riley, who we've known for a very long time, he was on the episode where we talked about Valiant Thor.
Oh, really?
At episode 59. For whatever reason, I'd completely forgotten that Riley now is the person we roped in to discuss Valiant Thor many, many years ago.
Yeah, that was I love Valiant Thor. What a fucking
It's
weird
good
story.
stuff. It's good stuff. Well, we also love our friend Riley,
Yes.
and he was in a bad car accident recently, and he's okay. He had to have a couple surgeries. He doesn't have any like brain injury, no concussion, nothing like that. But he does have a lot of medical bills. So I wanted to just shout out the GoFundMe that got set up for a good friend Riley. If you go on GoFundMe.com, you can look for Rally for Riley, and that's the number 4, posted by Michael Gambrell. But I also did a bit.ly link, so if you go to bit.ly/rally for Riley, and again, that's the number 4, should take you to the GoFundMe. Riley is a good friend of ours. Obviously, he's contributed to the podcast. If you can donate to our friend, that would be incredible. And I know some friends of mine who know Riley probably listen to this show too, and maybe they haven't heard. I would be surprised, but just please, if people can check that out and support our friend, that would be really awesome, because, we live in the United States of America where it's, you have a bad car accident and then you get charged a bunch of money for having that accident. So,
Yep.
See if people can help him out. That would be really incredible. Shouts out to Riley. I just wanted to bring that up front, because it's not funny. It sucks. But he's got a good recovery ahead, and it's been speedy, a speedy recovery, which is what you always wish for people to have. So
yeah, that's the best you can hope for.
He's doing well. I visited him. I've talked with him. He's doing better. And if people can help him out, he'll do even better. So, anyways, with that out of the way, let's get into this controllers bullshit with Martin Cannon. We are in part 2. We talked a lot in part 1 about the human hypothesis, quote unquote, of alien implants specifically, but Martin Cannon and the controllers is about the entire abductee experience. How can we explain that with human means, especially with what we know about weird clandestine operations and secret projects that may have crossed over into the world of UFOs? So we did talk about a lot of stuff. I have one last note on the electronic stimulation of the brain stuff that we talked about.
Okay.
AKA ESB. And Cannon was, arguing that you could apply this to a subject potentially remotely. This may be a way to explain not just implants, but also the phenomena that comes with them. So think telepathic communication. An alien comes to abduct you, and it speaks to you with its mind. Well, how do you explain that? It has to be otherworldly. Well, if we look at this technology, I believe we were talking about the stimoceiver, Jose Delgado, all this stuff. There is a way you could potentially do alien abductions all here on Earth, and that's what Cannon's trying to say. So here's the summary of Cannon's final note on this part of the story. It's almost impossible to pinpoint specific dates when these kinds of things would have been applied to abductees. Like, when was this being researched? When would we have had access to the technology? The implication that is throughout the controllers is that there is a possibility that things happened earlier than we know, because there's some evidence, somebody talking, usually in relation to something like MKUltra, where a date is thrown around. It's like, we were looking into this back in 1950X versus 1960X.
A lot of the stuff seems to come from the idea that the government has technology and stuff ahead of when the general public would be aware of it.
Yeah, and I would say that that's probably true.
Yeah.
just generally speaking, even outside of this particular area, I think it's a pretty safe bet that the government and the military have access to things that we are just not aware of. So here's what he says. He cross-references MKUltra predecessor projects like Artichoke, Bluebird. We talked about all these. Just relevant stuff like that, relevant sub-projects, and CIA cutouts. And he concludes with these 3 points. So here's what he says. 1, we can never know with certainty the true origin dates of the various brainwashing methods. Often we discover that techniques which seem impossibly futuristic actually originated in the 19th century. And then in parentheses here it says, pioneering ESB research was conducted in 1898 by J.R. Ewald, professor of physiology at Strasbourg. Point number 2, the open literature almost certainly gives a Baudelarized view of the actual research. And then 3, lavishly funded clandestine researchers, unrestrained by peer review or the need for strict controls, can achieve far more rapid progress than scientists, quote, on the outside. Which, again, all that makes sense to me. I don't think he's, saying anything particularly crazy there. But like I said, the point of all this stuff is that it seemed to have been going down in the 60s, but it's possible it was happening earlier than that. Cannon also says that ESP effects can be induced by electromagnetic radiation now. So, microwaves.
Yeah.
We're going to get into some microwaves this episode. Something I find interesting is that he points out that brain implantation research has been publicly discontinued since the 1970s. But is still likely taking place behind the scenes, so we can't really measure how much more advanced this tech has evolved since then. So again, this is all being written about in the 90s, the early 90s. I'm nowhere close to a brain implantation researcher, and I mean that both. I'm not physically close to any human being who is a researcher, but I'm also certainly not a brain implantation researcher myself. But I want to know where we're at now with this. Because just look at the bullshit with Elon Musk's Neuralink, like that crap, which I remember last year it was announced that they have a human subject that successfully had it implanted. Now, how much PR work is happening there? How much is, like, what's actually going on there? I just remember seeing the story. So somebody smarter than me, I would hope, can do some research into the possibility of connective tissue of, like, do we have more modern brain implant research? There has to be, right? Like,
yeah, you would think so. Because, like, the only thing I know really about Neuralink, I think I remember what you were talking about, but I remember all the monkey deaths they were hiding.
Yeah.
And so I, like, there's definitely something to be said about the government having done exploration into it in a way that we don't know about. You then wonder if Elon got a hold of that shit at some point.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I'm honestly, I would be unsurprised if I found that there was a researcher in this field of, I don't know, I guess parapolitical stuff who maybe has dug into this. But it just, I wonder because, yeah, writing that in the 90s and knowing what we know now makes me curious where that's at. That's all.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, here we're going to talk about something that Cannon refers to as wavies. This term is in reference to something that we would call something very, we would refer to it as something very different now.
Is this spelled like the band?
Wavies.
Oh, okay, no.
So no.
I was. Do you remember the band Wavves?
Yeah, I didn't know it was pronounced wavies.
I don't know if it was or not. I never heard anyone say it out loud.
I thought it was just waves, and it was just spelled funny for the hell of it. Yeah, but I don't know. I haven't
thought about that band since college. I think I listened to like one album because the guy that owned the record store that I used to go to all the time talked about it.
Yeah,
and like I was listening to it. It was around the same time I think as he tried to get me into like the Twilight sad and stuff.
Jeez, I don't remember that.
Yeah. Anyway,
that band is like in my mind associated with like, so it's like Waves and Beach House
Sure,
and Tame Impala. Like all that stuff is like the same thing to me, and I don't really listen to any of it.
Beach House is pretty good. I'll say that.
Okay.
Out of those, Beach House, if you're into like shoegazy indie pop, dream pop type,
okay.
not like it's not bog standard of that, so it's going to be a little afield. But also, I guess they're a Baltimore band, so I have to claim
you
them
have
now.
to. Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
I'm more of like a Whir kind of guy with my shoegaze, you know.
We're good too. We're and Nothing and all that. I really like Cloakroom. Anyway, let's okay. What's your favorite shoegaze record?
Oh God, I that's a good question. I can't say that one My Bloody Valentine album, can I?
I mean, you
like,
can say
is that
Loveless,
allowed?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's great. I have nothing. I think that they are the most notable band in the genre, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't say it.
Yeah, I think my taste in shoegaze is a little more pedestrian than the aficionado of shoegaze, because like I know some of the more popular acts mostly, but I do like. Didn't Whir put out a thing this year? Didn't they?
Yeah,
I really like that.
They're still pretty prolific. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Maybe what those fucking freaks over at the CIA could do is just, instead of, all this clandestine drug experimentation on innocent people shit, they could just turn on some My Bloody Valentine, spark up a doobie, and just chill out.
Yeah, I think that would be perfect, And honestly, they should listen to My Bloody Valentine at live show levels. Just because, they deserve a little ear pain.
Yeah, it's sort of, honestly, like, maybe what we could do is we could just get back at these freaks and do some psychic driving with shoegaze on them. And just see what happens, just like for experimental purposes. I don't know what that's gonna. Maybe they'll be like compelled to like stare down at their feet more than your average human being. We could and then like that. I don't know exactly what this will do, but I think that we need to just sit them in a room, kind of pull their eyelids open, fucking like Clockwork Orange style, and then just blast them with My Bloody Valentine or something like that.
I think that would be really good. I also
Thank you.
I got distracted for a second because when you said psychic driving, my brain tried to pull up ghost writing, and I realized that those are kind of like those are you could call what ghost writing is. It could have been called psychic driving, and I kind of think that's a better name.
We're gonna psychic drive these people, and then we're going to get them to do some of the writing.
The ghost writing, yeah. Okay.
So see what happens. Just a little experiment. Maybe.
Wow. I'm. Whew, we're going everywhere tonight. That's fine.
I mean, it's hard when you're trying to talk about this stuff and you have a temporary diversion into shoegaze. It's just there's not a lot of ways to sort of weave those things together. So, this is a decidedly unchill topic. But that's right, because we were talking about fucking wavies.
Yeah, that's how that was the digression. Yeah,
I completely forgot what we were talking about. So, you're gonna know exactly what a wavy is called in the contemporary parlance once I explain to you what a wavy is. Okay.
Okay.
So, Canon takes a little detour here to talk about this phenomenon. A wavy, these are people who claim to be victims of clandestine bombardment with non-ionizing radiation. In other words, wavies are a particular type of gang stalking victim, or you would usually see the term targeted individual.
Yeah.
So a running theme in the controllers is suggesting that we travel this like third path between the absolute dismissive skeptic and a total devout believer, right? And
the centrism of parapolitics.
Yes, yes, but at the same time, it makes a lot of sense here because, like, it feels what's the term, like dialectic almost, that you should maybe see if there's another route we can look at this from, because I think that his point is that once you are presented with enough stories of UFO abduction and things like this, it becomes clear that it can't be either one of those positions. You have to start looking at the more nuanced position that kind of tries to take in as much information about the thing as possible. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't like the comparison to centrism, because I agree here.
No, like, I think it is. It just, the way you phrased it, it was like,
I know,
okay,
the middle.
He's like, both sides are a little kind of out there. We got to go right towards the middle, because that's where we're rational, we're sane, we're just doing good common sense politics.
Here is the actual problem, and where you could maybe start drawing a comparison to centrism is like, you then, like, when you do take in this stuff as a whole and try and think of like in between these two more absolute positions, you do kind of go like, oh, well, you can't really say anything about it really conclusively, so that is sort of I don't know. So the point here, though, is Cannon wants to talk. He wants to ask about the people who are claiming to be wavies. Should we be really dismissing all cases outright? I'm sympathetic to this. Like, he's very aware of the challenge of determining legitimacy in a claim like this. I don't want to make it sound like he's writing in this book like, when people come to me saying they're being blasted with non-ionizing radiation by, spooks, like, you don't want to necessarily take every single one of those and go, there's some validity here. Like, obviously there's a problem here.
Yeah.
So my point is, he's very aware there's a problem. He says that, or rather he cites very real research. I tried to follow the stuff that he was citing. Sometimes, like I said in the first episode, sometimes he was referencing very real things, and I liked that. And then other times it was like either a little vague on what he was referring to, or he was citing something that was kind of silly. Like there's one where it was like, I'll have an example later, but I know that there was one that had to do with like parapsychology. Was like, when you look back into it, it was parapsychological. He's not like being disingenuous about including those things. Like he'll tell you, but it feels a little strange to be like, yeah, we're gonna talk about the guys who like, tried to do scientific studies on ghosts. Like that's where we're gonna get our legit research from. So like I said, some real stuff in here that he's citing. He also here's the example, actually. He manages to bring up, when we're talking about the wavy stuff and being beamed with microwave radiation, basically. He brings up Andrea Puharich. Do you remember that name?
That sounds vaguely familiar. Why do I know that name?
We discussed Puharich during the Uri Geller episodes, because that guy is a kook who backs Geller's psychic abilities. In fact, if I remember correctly, if you go to Uri Geller's website now, you can find a section that is just like, here's the Puharich, the text on all the supporting statements from Puharich and why I'm a legit psychic,
Sure.
But again, Cannon acknowledges Puharich's reputation. He's not just throwing him around just haphazardly. He says, like, this guy has been known to be kind of a kook, but the thing that he's saying about this particular phenomenon is something that is similar to other more legitimate scientists.
Okay.
Probably the eeriest story that he cites that I've run into before, but not in this level of detail, is DARPA's Pandora project, which goes back to this thing called the Moscow Signals. So here, the full real story on this is definitely for another episode, because you can fall down a rabbit hole of, Cold War clandestine operations and Havana syndrome stuff. But I have Cannon's own words here. Here's what he says. Soviet microwave bombardment of the U.S. Embassy in Moscow prompted the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency's Project Pandora, later renamed, whose ostensible goal was to determine whether these pulsations, which were reportedly 10 cycles per second, which puts them in the alpha range, could be used for the purposes of mind control. I suspect that the, quote, war on Tchaikovsky Street, as I called it, was used at least in part as a cover story for DARPA mind control research, and that the stories floated in the news via, for example, Jack Anderson's column about Soviet remote brainwashing served the same propaganda purposes as did the bleedings of Edward Hunter during the 1950s. So basically, there is this incident where there is microwave radiation being shot at a U.S. embassy in Moscow.
Okay.
This actually happened. I think this is maybe more of a full episode thing, but my casual understanding from just looking at a couple things is that this did get sort of spun as like the Soviets are trying to Havana syndrome American employees at the embassy.
Okay.
But what he's saying here is that that story may have been a cover because at the time DARPA was participating in mind control research akin to the ones that the MKUltra I honestly don't know if it was actually straight up MKUltra, but DARPA is definitely one of those organizations that's participated in some weird research during this time.
Yeah, they get brought up so much in conspiracy lore as like, you know, the CIA and the NSA are probably slightly more common than them, but DARPA, anytime you get into the weather control shit, anytime you get into like advanced beam technology and stuff, like when I was doing that space lasers episode, DARPA came up. You know,
Sure.
people just look at DARPA as if they're like AIM from Marvel Comics or what's the DC one, Star Labs. Like that, people look at them as like this sci-fi tech thing whenever we're talking about conspiracies, and it's but now they have done shit. I know they have done
sure
shit,
I was gonna
like,
say
they're
like
not.
I do believe DARPA is also they're responsible for a lot of stuff, and they have a lot of, I want to say like military funding and obviously government funding. So there are connections there that I do believe are pretty like you could probably draw some lines on a cork board that would make some level of sense, but also like then you can leap into the world of fringe belief. And DARPA will be there as well.
This is the problem with trying to do this podcast is like I'm not going to sit here and cape up for DARPA like they've never done anything wrong in their lives. But I do think that there's some healthy skepticism to be had of what certain people who make up conspiracy theories think DARPA has done versus what they've actually done.
Yeah, no, I think that's I completely agree. I think that it's the complicated thing about talking about any of this is that there is a very vocal, very much more well-known fringe element. Like I try to, and then you reach a point where you're trying to separate the legitimate researchers from the people who put doctor in front of their names who don't have any claim to the word doctor. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
It's like
people who are trying to just sell their books online and get brought in for seminars.
Yeah, and like like no joke, when I was doing a little bit of cursory looking around on this specific story, the DARPA Pandora project, I found like I want to say it was like an official government archive post about it, but then I on the same, you know, Google page or whatever, I found a website that was 2 clicks away from the most anti-Semitic material I've ever seen. Like it was like, so this is also where I get a little I start to feel a little crazy, because we've also previously established in these somewhat parapolitical episodes about clandestine operations and weird, shady, you know, stuff like that, that one of the core elements of the CIA in the early days is James fucking Jesus fucking Angleton, who was himself a conspiracy theorist. And I'm bringing him up again, but I plan to do an actual like a straight up episode about him. But here's the thing. We talked about his Wilderness of Mirrors thing, where you just are lost in this web of real facts and total bullshit. It's the phenomenon of like researching conspiracies is the same scenario, and it gets really, you start scratching your head because of everything we just described,
Yeah. You want to just push this a step further into the stuff that I just randomly think about at 2 a.m. When you look at how social media has put everyone's perspective at the same level, more or less, you start to kind of believe some of those social engineering conspiracies where they're trying to keep everyone divided and paranoid and stressed out and fucked up by basically turning your entire life into staring at a series of Hall of Mirror, the James Angleton mirrors thing,
Yeah.
There's so much and couple that in with all the bot farms and shit. And it's just it makes just interacting with your day-to-day existence feel like researching conspiracy theories sometimes, you know?
I was trying to explain to my family, because I've been I've been with my family for 2 weeks here, and my sister has her baby here, and I've been helping with that, and my sister was asking, and I felt so stupid saying this in front of my sister as a 2-month-old baby, but I was like, I'm exhausted, and she's like, she was like, what are you exhausted about? And I was like, the podcast and stuff. And she's like, what about it? Like the schedule? And then I had to explain that it's because I'm reading mind melting bullshit. And she's like, oh, I did. But then I snapped to her, and I was like, she has a baby. She's literally doing the most stressful thing in the world right now. But, you come off a bender of a couple hours of reading this stuff, and it's just, it's a little much. But, God, anyways, to get back to what we were talking about. He mentions Edward Hunter at the very end here. And just so we're clear, the comparison that he's making here, that was the CIA propagandist who began the whole brainwashing thing. And if you remember, he was the guy who basically was like, yeah, the Chinese brainwashed people, or whatever it is he said, Russian and Chinese communist brainwashing techniques. But then you start digging and you realize that this accusation is more like a self-admission for the CIA. So that's why he's making the comparison. So, Now, I did want to say, because of everything we just discussed and what we're going to keep discussing as we move forward, I mentioned how Cannon now disavows the controllers. And I've listened to a bunch of interviews with him. He seems to feel that he has some responsibility for the spread of gang stalking and targeted individual conspiracy stuff. And specifically, he feels responsible for feeding into what he was describing as the delusions of people who are mentally unwell.
Sure. Okay.
And when you read all this stuff about microwave beams and whatnot, you can really tell that the DNA of contemporary gang stalking and targeted individual conspiracy is here. We had an email. Okay, we have a guy. We have a particular guy. I don't know if he actually listens to the show or not, but we do have a person who every other month or so will email us this exact kind of thing. And so this seems to have really stuck in Cannon's craw, and I understand why. Again, his research is, the way he writes about this, it's incredibly paranoid. And I don't think it's all bad, but Cannon wants nothing to do with it because he feels it has a lasting effect on some of the more mentally ill people. He's talked about how he'll have people contact him who's like, I didn't know what was wrong with me until I read your text, and now I know why it's happening and stuff like that. So I get why he is. Again, I'm kind of bummed that he feels he has to throw the whole thing out, because I still think it's good in a lot of ways, but that's why. It's just very hard when you want to straddle that line between skeptic and believer, and you want to say that maybe some of these cases are true, but it's challenging, especially when you have some weird shit land in your inbox where you read it and you go, you need to be in, you need some help. You need assistance, I think. And anyways, I don't really know what to do with that, but I just wanted to mention that because it seemed very important to him when he was talking about it, that's why he's distanced from it. Like,
and that makes sense. Like, I mean, that what he was trying to get at is there are human physical ways to quote unquote fake an alien abduction. And so in that ends, he did a good job, but in doing so, he brought up some ideas that can, when taken out of that context, make people really feed into their delusions. Yeah. And so I get why he might want to put a warning. Like, you know, I unfortunately I get it. But it is unfortunate, you know?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And it's also unfortunate when you know, like, for instance, I remember reading when I was researching a bunch of the MKUltra stuff that there were people who were actual, like, pretty well confirmed victims of abuse through MKUltra. Like, for instance, I mean, to go back to this thing, there were, I believe, there were some people who were victims of psychic driving. The Canadian psychologist who is the MKUltra funded researcher, his name's not coming to me now. People out there will know who I'm talking about, but I do believe that some of those victims were positively identified and figured out, and so they're out there is the thing, you know. Like, he makes a good point that it's like, well, we know the scale of this, we know, or at least we have some sense of the scale, if not knowing it, you know, super well, because given that the books were cooked, but this has affected hundreds, if not thousands of people, right? Yeah. So they have to be out there. So when you have that, but you also have some people who maybe are mentally ill, it's hard. Yeah. So Canon also anticipates a skeptical argument about directed microwave beams. This next section suggests a counter to that argument, and again is going to highlight why the text is used by self-proclaimed targeted individuals to this day. So here's what he says. Critics might counter that any burst of microwave energy powerful enough to have truly remote effects would probably also create a thermal reaction. That is, if a clandestine operator propagated a wave from outside an abductee's room, say from a low-flying helicopter or from a truck traveling alongside the subject's car, the power necessary to do the job might be such that the microwave would cook the target before it got a chance to launder his thoughts. Basically, the skeptical argument is that people would get cooked by the microwave beam before they were able to beam, you know, whatever into their minds.
Like, there is something about that like, for this to be effective, you probably would need some very specialized pinpoint accuracy type technology that would be difficult, because if you did just large scale beam a bunch of fucking microwaves at people, it would cook them.
You would turn them into a video game turkey leg that restores 10 HP when you walk over it. Here's what he says, though. He says it's a fair criticism, but Jose Delgado's work, the what did I call it? The stimoceiver, that guy, the one who stopped the bull. He says that Delgado's work may give us our solution. Once an abductee has been implanted, and if we are to trust hypnotic regression accounts of abductees at all, the first implanting session may occur in childhood, the chip in the brain would act as an intensifier of the signal. Such an individual could have any number of UFO experiences while his or her bed partner dozes comfortably. Furthermore, recent reports indicate that a waiver can achieve pinpoint accuracy without the use of Delgado-style implants. In 1985, volunteers at the Midwest Research Institute in Kansas City, Missouri, were exposed to microwave beams as part of an experiment sponsored by the Department of Energy and the New York State Department of Health. As the Arizona Republic described the experiment, quote, a matched control group sat in the same room without being bombarded by non-ionizing radiation. Apparently, one can focus the wave quite narrowly, a fact which has wide implications for abductees.
Hey, remember when I said you would need it to have like pinpoint accuracy, and then you were like, "Yeah, they need to have pinpoint accuracy, and they can." Yeah, okay,
That's
cool.
what he's saying. Yes. Or like just the idea that you wouldn't even need some sort of receiver, but that it's feasible with a receiver. It's again another one of those points where it maybe calls into question how early would we have been able to beam microwaves into people's brains. You know,
Yep.
it's a crazy thought. So I think you can also see what's happening here where, like, okay, helicopters outside the house of a target or a vehicle driving alongside a target, these are things that you could, like, sort of apply to an abductee experience based on what he's suggested so far, which is the abductees lying in bed at night with a mysterious light, you know, peeking through the window, and there's a black helicopter that's silently hovering overhead, and the abductee, you know, being halted on a long dark road at night by a UFO hovering to next to their vehicle. If clandestine agents want to fake UFO abductions, could they implant a subject with a stimoceiver-like device or do this pinpoint microwave beam, then later fly a helicopter over their house and shoot them with the microwaves to create the abduction experience in the abductee's mind? So that's like saying it, like laying it out like that is obviously really a lot wild, but I find that there's interesting ideas here.
Yeah, I like the idea of someone gearing up for their nightly fucking UFO-inducing helicopter run.
Yeah.
You know?
What is that job like?
Yeah, how do you apply for that? Do you have to just be in like a military helicopter pilot, or is that like do they post ads on Craigslist with some like coded terminology? It just is. It seems like such a like this is how I know that I'm not like a total soulless person.
Okay. I can't wait to hear this.
I sit here and I think like how do you even like agree to that? Like how do you even do that job? It's just so fucking like evil and like makes no fucking sense. Like why would you be willing to do that to a person? And it's like, oh no, people would absolutely like. I've seen the fucking recruitment ads on television recently. People for sure would fucking sign up to do that shit.
I mean, I just something I think about pretty often is okay. If you want to, I would argue that if you want to start to be able to uncover why a system is fucked up. Let's say you want to know, like, well, what if the CIA is really fucked up and doing, like, got people doing fucked up shit and faking alien abductions or whatever. You gotta look at the roots of the thing, you know, like, and if you look at those roots, it's like the good old boys who kind of, you know, like we talked about all that. It operates a little bit like a frat house, and people are fucking dosing each other with LSD,
and they think they're on the cutting edge of something, so it's worth the excess.
Like think psychologically about the power trip of being able to do any of this. If or even just the stuff that we know for sure you could do in MKUltra. Like there's gotta be people out there who would get fucking high off the power trip of being able to do this kind of shit. So obviously I'm not saying, you know, this, you know, I'm just saying psychologically I have to imagine, like you said, there are people out there who would be totally stoked that they are faking alien abductions against, you know, the communist people, the communists who've infiltrated the United States, which again, the insane paranoid level, like thing about communism, that's the driving force, the reason that they're doing all this at the beginning. It's, if you look at the beginnings of clandestine stuff like this in the United States, you just there's a lot of bullshit that sucks. You know, I don't know if, I don't think I gave a very eloquent, I didn't say that very eloquently, but hopefully you and people out there know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think that Angleton is probably, maybe there's researchers out there who would disagree with this. My impression as a total amateur who's been interested in this stuff for a podcast for a couple years now is that he is part of the core DNA of what the CIA and like clandestine operations are in this country. That's my impression. I'm willing to be wrong on that. Anyways, so everything that we've been talking about, this is all sort of in service of getting to something core to MKUltra and core to the controllers, which is hypnosis. So I got into it in a little bit in the last episode, but hypnosis looms large here. When we covered Sidney Gottlieb, we mostly focused on the use of drugs, and that's the pretty popular conception of what MKUltra was. But it cannot be understated how much time, effort, and money was put into hypnosis research. Cannon even has a segment with the Senate hearings where the CIA is being grilled, and there's a segment here where they're talking to Sidney Gottlieb, and Gottlieb is asked about hypnosis and radiohypnotic intracerebral control.
Hypnotic interest. Okay. I think I'm with you.
So when he's asked about whether the CIA was studying radio waves in conjunction with hypnosis, Gottlieb initially says no, and then the interviewer kind of like pushes back. He's like, "Are you absolutely certain?" And then Gottlieb says this: "Well, I am trying to be responsive to the terms you used. As I remember it, there was a current interest, running interest, all the time in what effects people's standing in the field of radio energy have, and it could easily have been that somewhere in many projects, someone was trying to see if you could hypnotize someone easier if he was standing in a radio beam. That would seem like a reasonable piece of research to do." Cannon makes also a really good point that, like, the way Gottlieb may have been able to dodge certain lines of questioning is that the person interviewing them might not know that a lot of the research that was potentially happening on this exact subject may have been military side and not actually his team. So he could go, "Oh, that's not an MKUltra thing, so I'm telling the truth. I don't actually know about that." So there's a bunch of things like that. And then he's getting, Gottlieb's being interviewed, and the interviewer says, "I'd heard this testimony that they'd used microwaves that could wipe out the memory of animals." And apparently Gottlieb responded with, "I can believe that, Senator."
All right.
So it's, it's pretty weird. It's pretty weird stuff. I mean, like, obviously, whether or not they're doing research or not doesn't prove that this stuff works conclusively. But it is weird that they're, like, very weird about it. You know what I mean? So what Cannon argues in these sections is that you may not need to have a hypnosis subject sit in a room with a hypnotherapist to induce hypnosis. This is the point. People think of hypnosis and you think of the guy with the watch. Yeah, and he's, you're getting very sleepy. He's saying that this can actually be done remotely. Here's what he says. And this is where things get, we get into some complicated, some terminology. Cannon says this: "Over the years, certain journalists have asserted," and sorry, I should say, this is one of those points where I get a little frustrated where he'll say something like certain journalists or certain scientists, and I want to be like, who? Martin, who?
Yeah, name names. Cite sources.
He says, "Certain journalists have asserted that the CIA has mastered a technology called RHICEDOM, or RICE-DOM is how I'm going to read that. RHIC means radiohypnotic intracerebral control. EDOM stands for electronic dissolution of memory. Together, these techniques can allegedly remotely induce hypnotic trance, deliver suggestions to the subject, and erase all memory for both the instruction period and the act which the subject is asked to perform."
Okay.
RHIC uses the stimoceiver, or a micro-miniaturized offspring of that technology, to induce a hypnotic state. Interestingly, this technique is also reputed to involve the use of intramuscular implants, a detail strikingly reminiscent of the scars mentioned in Bud Hopkins' Missing Time. Apparently, these implants are stimulated to induce a post-hypnotic suggestion.
Interesting.
Then he says EDOM is nothing more than missing time itself, the erasure of memory from consciousness through the blockage of synaptic transmission in certain areas of the brain. By jamming the brain's synapses through a surfeit of acetylcholine, neural transmission along selected pathways can be effectively stilled. According to the proponents of RiceDom, my God, acetylcholine production can be affected by electromagnetic means. Modern research in the psychophysiological effects of microwaves confirm this proposition. Too many terms for somebody with a light speech impediment like myself, but
and also, like, it's a lot of. I think there's this thing. This is kind of a weird point, but bear with me here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing that you get a lot in movies and TV shows and stuff where they're like, we still don't really know how memory works. We still don't really know how like everything in the brain functions and how it works. It's this miracle that we may never understand. Science may never get there. And then you hear stuff like this, and you're like, maybe they do know a bit more about that than, like, maybe we know more about that than we're letting on. Because it's really great for people to be able to selectively stop your brain from keep making memories, you know?
Yeah, it is. I don't know. It's very strange because you do think of the brain as this sort of almost mystical thing that, like, we just simply can't actually explain it, but it turns out the things that we can't explain, there's a lot more of them than you would maybe expect. So all of that being said, Cannon says, like, he's, again, fair, I think. He says you can't conclusively say that this RiceDom tech stuff actually exists.
Sure.
He mentions former FBI agent Lincoln Lawrence in his book called Were We Controlled? And I thought it was so funny here. He briefly goes like, by the way, Lincoln Lawrence, that's not the real name of this guy. It's a pen name, and I know the real name. And he just moves on. So I
love
curious.
when someone does that, where it's just like, neener, I know this and you don't, and like won't say what it is. Yeah.
I when I hear him talk, he makes it sound like he has interacted with so many people in the weird conspiracy and UFO, and I think even like cryptozoology. He's talked to a lot of interesting people in this field. He's an interesting. What I'd really love for him to write about is just his experience meeting various people in the world of UFOs and conspiracies and stuff. That would be a good book. But he talks about this guy, Lincoln Lawrence, and Were We Controlled? And inside that, this supposedly, like, sources who I think were anonymous leaked details about how RHIC worked to Lawrence. And then he mentions that there's two writers, Walter Boart, author of Operation Mind Control, and a journalist named James Moore. Both of them, they claim to have access to a 350-page manual from 1963 that details the RiceDom tech. So,
okay.
But again, none of this is conclusive.
Right.
But there's some interesting stories out there.
I do like your idea of you want the book of this guy talking about all of his experiences with people. We don't get a lot of conspiracy theorist memoirs, you know?
No, I agree. I think, and he, like, we don't have time to get into too many of the people he's talked about. I mean, the interviews are out there. I mentioned in the first episode that there's a bunch of great material on YouTube from the last, like, 3 years of him talking with people. So if you want to listen to somebody talk about this stuff and the people that he's interacted with, that's a really good thing to go check out. But yeah, I mean, there's not. I guess I don't know of a conspiracy theorist who wanted to give an honest telling of their life's interactions with other people in the community. You know, like usually it's about being a super soldier or the chosen star seed or whatever the fuck,
Yeah, it's like I got these secret documents that no one else has access to, and I'm gonna write up the like idea of what is actually going on. Very few people get navel gaze. Well, actually, that's not true. People get navel gazy.
They get very navel gazy, but it has to be completely overtaken by fantasy elements in a lot of ways. So yeah, a lot of this comes down to he said, she said stuff, and canon fully admits, like I said, there's nothing conclusive. It's a lot like all the MKUltra and all this bullshit where you can't say for sure one way or another. But the hints that do exist are pretty freaky. So if all of this is true, then all a spook would need to do to induce calmness in a subject and then get hypnosis is you could implant them and fire the beams, or maybe you don't have to implant them. In the state of calmness, then you would have the various remote technologies or something like them to induce that hypnosis. And then the ability to change a target's emotional state, that's something that this can apparently do. And this could explain even more things. So think of the abductees who, finding themselves suddenly in the presence of an alien, will describe how they found themselves, despite everything, feeling incredibly calm.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could even explain, canon sort of uses this all to explain that maybe the sudden personality shifts of abductees can be explained by this. People who seem to become somebody different after their experience. With this tech, a faked abductee could have the abduction experience planted in their mind remotely, their memory of the experience erased, and soon we will learn the perception of their abductors altered into something alien.
Cool. All right.
So many of these things seem possible, given that everything we've established so far is true. But here's a new question that he digs into. Once a subject is under hypnosis, can you make them commit antisocial acts? This is a big question with hypnosis, huh?
Yeah, it's a big thing of like art, because there's like a look. I don't know anything actually about hypnosis. I'm, to be completely honest, not even sure if it's really real. But I'm probably gonna learn more coming up here. But like I think, isn't there some shit about like you will reject things that are like completely antithetical to your morals?
This is something that I have heard, yes. But the thing is, that's a thing that I've heard that I can't remember if it's something that has been talked about in real life or if it's just something that I picked up from some sort of media.
Yeah, that's I don't fucking know anything about hypnosis.
But we're gonna kind of dig into that because this is like, it's a hotly debated topic. I think I'm going to have to do some dives into hypnosis research at some point if I feel like I can stomach it. But canon has a number of examples of hypnosis professionals who claim it is, in fact, possible to make somebody do a quote-unquote antisocial act. So in the last episode, I briefly mentioned the Copenhagen hypnosis murders. This is where canon digs into this story, and I think it's fascinating, and the implications are a bit disturbing. So here's what he says. Occasionally, claims of hypnotically induced antisocial behavior find their way into the courtroom. One such case, which led to the incarceration of the hypnotist, was the Palle Hardrup affair. This incident occurred in Denmark in 1951. Palle Hardrup robbed a bank, killing a guard in the process, and later claimed that he had been instructed to do so by the hypnotist Bjorn Nielsen. Nielsen eventually confessed to having engineered the crime as a test of his hypnotic abilities. So he literally Sasuke'd this guy. But by proxy. He was a Sasuke Uchiha by proxy. I know you don't know what that means, but some people out there...
I know it's Naruto, right?
Well, Sasuke, or I guess not Sasuke, but his brother, whose name is escaping me, kills the entire Uchiha clan. And when Sasuke asks him why, he says it was to test my abilities.
Is that... So this is Naruto?
This is Naruto.
Okay, cool.
Well, Naruto didn't do it. His brother, one of the members of the Uchiha clan. You know what? Don't worry about it. Okay. I fucked up the metaphor already. So he goes on and says, the most significant aspect of this incident concerns the pose Nielsen adopted to work his malicious designs. During the hypnosis sessions, Nielsen hypnotically suggested that he was Hardrip's guardian angel, represented by the letter X. Hardrip testified that there is another room next door where Nielsen and I go and talk on our own. It is there that my guardian spirit usually comes and talks to me. Nielsen says that X has a task for me. One of these tasks was arranging for Hardrip's girlfriend to have sex with the hypnotist. The other tasks he mentioned included robbery and murder. Nielsen convinced his victim that X wanted the robbery funds to be used for worthwhile political goals. The end, Hardrip was told, justified the means. Compare this scenario to that encountered in the typical contactee case, in which alien guardians convince their victims/subjects that the encounter will eventually serve some unspecified higher purpose. Indeed, in my interviews with abductees who have established a long-term relationship with their visitors, I have found that some of them originally believed themselves in contact with Hardrip-like angelic guardians. Only in recent years was the angel pose discarded and the true alien form revealed. Thus, we have one possible means of overcoming the proposition that hypnosis cannot induce antisocial behavior. If a hypnotist lacks scruples and has access to a particularly susceptible subject, he can induce a misperceived reality. Actions which we would abhor in an everyday context would become acceptable in specialized circumstances. A citizen who could never commit murder on a suburban street might, if drafted into an army, kill on the field of battle. In hypnosis, the mind becomes that battlefield.
Interesting.
Oh, my webcam just shit itself, but I think I'm still recording.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Yeah,
I just can't see you.
What the fuck? Yeah, that was very strange. I think that the maybe we have some spooks interfering with the Zoom line right now. I'm maybe diving into information that's a little too top secret.
Look, we're getting too close to the realness. We haven't had one of these check-ins in a while where some, 3-letter agency decides to give us a little test. Are we able to go? Us. Yeah, Kyle's webcam fucked up for a while. I don't know what all I'm leaving in, but we'll go with that.
That's never happened before, is all I'm saying. We were in the middle of that, and as soon as I ended the thing on hypnosis being the battlefield of the mind, my webcam died. So who knows?
Hey, and Zoom is the battlefield of the internet.
That's true. That's very true. In a way, you're right, Niall. In a lot of ways, you're right.
Yeah, at least like two. So yeah, I do think that it's interesting because like I've heard this argument before in media. I can't think of a specific instance, but the idea of using hypnosis to make someone think that they're in an altered reality where they are a part of some killing force, or they have to do the thing for a morally true reason. Even so far as to be like you're cutting someone's neck, but they think that you're seeing it as like a bamboo pole where you're practicing.
Sure.
Like these kind of heightened things like that. So what I'm getting at is like, it's interesting how you see these ideas maybe permutated on in a more overt, ridiculous way in media that then like is kind of there's some theoretical precedent.
Yeah, well, and I think also beyond just like saying like, oh, I'm going to swap what you think is happening in reality with something that's like more acceptable, but underneath the acceptable fake reality, there's something horrifying happening. I think what he's also saying here is that you can get them to do bad things like murder people, like just actually do the act if there is a justification that can be made by their now warped perception of reality. Like like I said, the guy who killed somebody and the hypnotist supposedly commanded him to do it. He was being told that the robbing of the bank was going to be used for like positive political goals. So he had like a justification that was sort of programmed into him as the idea. It's
military recruitment tactics.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Can Cannon also references psychologist and hypnosis expert John Watkins here, and Watkins suggests that if our understanding of a situation can be altered, this is what he's talking about, then behavior will follow in accordance with this altered understanding. And Watkins suggests that a suggestible subject under a hypnotic state, or apparently even a post-hypnotic state, could be made to hallucinate, ignore pain, hear sounds that aren't there, and even be made to see people who aren't there. Cannon wants to know that if a traditional use of hypnosis by way of somebody like Watkins, like if he's saying that you can do this, what could clandestine hypnosis combined with psychoelectronics of the CIA do? To be fair, once again, Cannon does also include other scientists who have argued against Watkins' assertions here. Two scientists, in fact, that's Orrin and Milton Erickson. Cannon has a note on these two that I thought was kind of funny, though. He says, Milton H. Erickson, in an experimental investigation of the possible antisocial use of hypnosis in Psychiatry, 1939, Volume 2, Erickson argues that if a hypnotist has convinced his subject to misperceive reality, then resulting actions cannot be considered antisocial, for the actions would be acceptable within the subject's internal reality construct. This argument strikes me as semantic quibbling. So they're basically just saying, well, you can't say they're immoral if the reality that this subject is experiencing says they are, you know?
Yeah.
So Cannon also argues that the Hardrip case would be a pretty good example in defense of Watkins' assessment of antisocial behavior through hypnosis. I doubt I need to embellish on why this idea, while fitting for the UFO abduction phenomenon, has spread to so many different corners of weirdness and conspiracy. Cannon suggests that this could maybe help explain the more extreme cult and occult groups and their actions. He puts it nicely. Indeed, when we consider the extreme personality changes, we understand the desirability of installing a hypnotic cover story within a supernatural matrix. People will do for God, or the devil, or the Space Brothers what they would not do otherwise.
Yeah. Give people a higher power, a higher calling, and they'll be more willing to do things that they might have found objectionable. Sure.
Yeah. Cannon ties this up with a bow by asking the question, what did they do with the quote-unquote disposal problem of MKUltra guinea pigs, or guinea pigs of this theoretical faked alien abduction operation stuff? This is also something we've discussed a bit, though not at length in other episodes. But the really blunt fact is that people seem to have had their minds totally broken. There's a lot of means through which this was done. There was a lot of people also who were already, like they experimented heavily in the early days on, schizophrenics. It was people were given lobotomies, people were locked away in asylums, people were just swept under the rug by the merit of their own insanity, or that they were like a quote unquote undesirable of society. So who's going to notice or care?
Yeah, they were disposable because they didn't have families or anyone that cared.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
It sucks.
Cannon, though, argues that eventually it became clear that this was not sufficient. And here's what he says. A more sophisticated solution had to be found. One of the goals of the CIA's mind control efforts was the erasure of memory via hypnosis and drugs, electronics, lobotomies, etc. Not only would this hide what occurred during the experimental indoctrination/programming sessions, it would prove useful in the field. Quote, amnesia was a big goal, confirms Victor Marchetti, who points out its usefulness in dealing with the contract agents. Quote, after you've done it, the agent doesn't even know what he's done. You send him in, he does the job. When he comes out, you clean his head out. The big problem, despite hypnotically induced amnesia, there would be memory leaks. Snippets of the repressed material would arise spontaneously in dreams as flashbacks, etc. A proposed solution. Give the subject a screen memory, a false story. Thus, even if he starts to recall the material, he will recall it incorrectly. So he explains how a false memory would have a hypnosis subject feel more at peace than just a blank hole where a memory used to be. If you just have straight up missing time or no memory, that's going to be disconcerting. So if a hypnotist wanted their subject to forget that they were hypnotized, they could avoid the missing memory problem and simply provide a cover story for that missing period. we'd previously talked about hypnotically induced alter egos and personalities, and here Cannon brings up another example, a man named Luis Angel Castillo, and holy cow, we do not have time to get into this here in full. This is another episode in itself, and I'll tell you this much. If we talk about Luis Castillo, we should probably do it in like around the same time that we talk about JFK conspiracy stuff. Because one of the altered egos that this guy supposedly had was one that where he was fully convinced that he was one of JFK's assassins.
Interesting. Okay.
But Cannon does, there's a short synopsis here of Castillo's relationship to the theory of these hypnotically induced alters. So the story goes that Castillo was an agent for the FBI equivalent in the Philippines, which is the National Bureau of Investigation. And supposedly Castillo had been hypnotized not only to have 4 alternate personalities, but also had false memories implanted in him via hypnosis. Cannon concludes that while the idea of multiple personalities induced through hypnosis is still controversial, he says that pseudo-memory, that's what he calls it, actually has been repeatedly replicated in experimental situations. So again, in his own words, I want to cap this all off because I kept running into this thing where I'm reading his stuff and I feel like he's much more eloquent than me. So here's what he actually says, because I thought it was interesting.
Okay.
This point is vitally important for students of the abduction phenomenon. We cannot assume the accuracy of abduction descriptions given during subsequent hypnotic regression. Moreover, we cannot even assume the accuracy of spontaneously arising recollections, for example, abduction memories not elicited through hypnotic regression. Indeed, responsible skeptics have argued that hypnotic regression may prove inadvertently harmful in that it may lock in place a false remembrance. Note, however, that other psychiatric professionals consider hypnotic regression the best technique, however flawed, in unlocking amnesia. For my part, I maintain an ambivalent and cautious attitude toward the use of hypnosis in abductee work. Granted, it is all too easy for the debunkers to cry confabulation to dismiss hypnotic testimony which does not conform to our preconceptions about the possible. I do not intend to make the same error. Whenever skeptics offer the phenomenon of pseudo-memory to rationalize abduction claims, they cite experimental situations in which pseudo-memory was originally created by a hypnotist. These experiments cannot be cited as proof that an individual abductee spontaneously conjured up a fantasy, which just happens to correspond to the details of hundreds of similar fantasies. Rather, laboratory studies of pseudo-memory creation prove my point. Pseudo-memory can be induced by previous hypnosis. In other words, an abductee may talk of aliens when the reality was something else entirely. In correspondence with me, a noted abduction researcher wrote of an instance in which an abductee recounted seeing a helicopter during his experience. As the abductee testimony progressed, the helicopter turned into a UFO. During one of the quite few regression sessions I attended, I heard an exactly similar narrative. Bud Hopkins would argue about that the helicopter was a screen memory hiding the awful reality of the UFO encounter. But does Occam's razor really cut that way? Shouldn't we also consider the possibility that the object in question really was a helicopter which the abductee was instructed to recall as a UFO?
Yeah, I think that would be the Occam's razor thing.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I was talking about earlier about, like, are people being visited by, helicopters and being blasted and hypnotized into thinking that they're being, being attacked by a UFO and its occupants are abducting them? This is what we're here to talk about.
Yeah. Are black helicopters the real UFOs?
It's an interesting question. So this is where we're going to conclude part 2. And we're going to try and finish up the controllers in part 3, as well as I want to talk a little bit about the man himself and some of the other stuff that he's been involved in, because he's got some other stuff going on that's interesting, as well as, like I said, that like multiple decade long gap where he just was not involved because he
his wild years.
Think, yeah, think of everything I just described, and think the kinds of people it would attract. I'm sure he's heard from every single one of them.
Yeah. I bet.
So, very interesting stuff. Some of it scary, some of it funny. That's where
really runs the gamut. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. So now, with all that in mind, are you ready for a big question?
Oh, I'm very ready.
Okay. Which memory of yours do you think is most likely to have been planted in your mind by the CIA?
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Do you have one while I try to figure out what mine would be?
I was going to say probably my memory of this entire podcast, frankly.
Okay.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is confusing because we're doing it right now. So maybe at some point they were like, we don't have to keep, hypnotizing him into believing he's a podcaster, which, like, that's the most fucked up thing you could do to a person, really. But maybe at a certain point, it's like the hypnosis was so effective, I just kept doing a podcast.
Yeah, or this is some sort of memory breaking through where you're starting to have some recall of it in terms of having some kind of control of the hallucination. Because maybe I'm not real.
Oh fuck! Don't say that. I don't even want to think about that. Oh, I figured it was either this podcast or that time I accidentally shit myself in our old house when we were living together.
On the bath mat?
On the bath mat, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, I was sick. I was very sick when that happened, but that's a traumatic memory I'd rather get rid of, and I'm assuming that's been planted there by the CIA to torture me.
You want to know what's fucked up, Kyle?
Sure.
When you started to insinuate that you were going to have a second option, my brain jumped to that before you said it. I'm not joking.
Jesus Christ. How is that possible? I mean,
I don't know.
Either. I mean, look, maybe this is. Fuck. Can you induce the hypnotic memories in the same memory into two different people? Are you and I the same person?
I think honestly, this podcast could be.
Are you one of my alter personalities?
I think so. Yeah.
Fuck.
Or maybe you're my alter.
That's really scary. But then I wouldn't be real. Maybe.
Yeah.
Or am I the original? One of us is the original. And, oh fuck! This is too complicated.
Maybe we're in kind of a Shazam type situation where only one of us has control at a time.
Okay, interesting. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, right? Is that what he's called?
Yeah.
Or wasn't that also kind of like what Freakazoid was like?
I think so. I only watched like one episode of Freakazoid, so I'm not the authority there.
I think this is kind of a Freakazoid situation.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Anyways, what was your answer?
I'm gonna say that the I for some reason had this very specific, very intensive and detail-filled dream where I went to this theme park in Iowa that I went to as a child but had never been to in my adult life, and so I had this like full thing as if it had actually happened to me that was in a dream that I think that was induced into my head. I think that like for some reason the CIA really was trying to cover up for the fact that I was getting experimented on, and for some reason decided to implant me with memories of going to a theme park I haven't been to in 25 years with my cousin.
Okay.
And having kind of a bad time. Like it wasn't, I wasn't like going around and getting cotton candy and riding roller coasters and stuff. I was just kind of like walking around a very crowded area and for a long time. And I remember specifically going on a carousel. And I think I did go on one roller coaster, but I didn't like it. And so it was just this kind of weirdly stressful dream in a theme park with my cousin. Shouts out, Joe.
It's so funny, though, that it's just like, it was just like kind of a bad time. Like I just wasn't enjoying myself.
And like
so...
Joe has kids, and so the kids were running around, and I was kind of corralling them at like carnival games and shit, and like they weren't winning prizes. Yeah, I did this. This did not happen, but it did happen in my brain.
You know, it's so funny.
Adventureland is the park, if anyone gives a fuck.
That's so funny. I actually just had a dream where I woke up, not like because it was a bad time, but the mundanity of it felt so absurd to me, and I was like, why the fuck did I dream this? I just had a dream that I was in my parents' old house, and I just had a giant tub of like epoxy resin. And I was like doing something with it. And that was the dream. I don't know what, I've never handled epoxy resin in my life.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I wasn't watching YouTube videos like, Google like, epoxy resin tutorial. I hadn't done any of that. That was just what my dream was about. I don't know.
When was this?
This was last night.
Oh, okay. Because my dream is literally from multiple, like, I think 3 or 4 years ago, and I still remember it. It's like, for some reason, this has really stuck with me, and that's why I think it's a CIA implant.
Shit, you know what? I just remembered something that I'm now realizing is the actual thing that was implanted in my brain.
Okay.
And this will require a brief explanation. But I think the CIA may have planted a memory in my mind that my father was in a Spin Doctors cover band.
Oh, yeah. That is the actual answer to this question. Oh my God, that is the true answer.
Okay. This is a real thing where
I think we've explained this on the podcast.
We maybe
before.
have, but for those who haven't heard, which will probably be most people, this is one of those things that for whatever fucking reason, it like genuinely bothers me that this is a belief that I had in my mind, because I remember telling you, this is, how long ago is this? This was like college, right? Maybe
no, it's high school.
Was it high school? Well,
I remember you telling me this in the band room of our high school, and like I think you then found out that it was fake in college.
Well,
so
shouts out
this
again,
persisted.
Shouts out again to our good friend Riley, because he's one of the people who has, poked fun at me for this whole thing. There's a whole group of friends of mine who I told this to. I was like, yeah, my dad was in a Spin Doctors cover band. I 100% believe that like before I was born, my dad was, which I don't even think that lines up in the timeline, but or maybe when I was a small child, he was in a Spin Doctors cover band. This never happened. This didn't happen. My dad was never in a Spin Doctors cover band. It doesn't make sense at all.
No.
And I 100%, I think something is a little wrong with my brain. Just a little bit. Because I 100% believed it. And then I like asked my dad about it years and years and years ago. And he was like, what in the world are you talking about? No, I was not in a So yeah. I don't know what happened to me.
This was a hallmark thing that we talked about you for years, to the point where I told it to people. And
oh, Jesus.
So when it was then revealed eventually that it was entirely made up, unintentionally, it really was a shock to the system.
I don't know what happened. I really, it's so baffling to me that it kind of weirds me out, and I think that's probably got to be the thing the CIA put there.
Yeah, I think that's about as good a candidate as we're going to come up with.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
All right.
Niall, are you ready to do some business?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and take care of some business. So if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
We're on Blue Sky at It Gets Weird. Go ahead. Sorry. Or I was supposed to say Facebook. Fuck Facebook. I mean, we're on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean,
it gets weird, but whatever.
We maybe don't even need to say the Twitter one anymore. But yeah. So we're also on all your favorite podcatchers. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird, and we're almost certainly there.
We're on twitch.tv/It Gets Weird. I'm in the final days of the Fire Red Nuzlocke with friend of the show Colin. It's been a lot of fun. I'm planning on playing a lot of games this winter because I'm not fucking going anywhere. So come and hang out. Give us a follow on Twitch and come and hang out with me as I play video games. We usually play on Sundays, so check out Sundays around, noonish Eastern Standard Time. So give us a follow. Email us at itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. if you have an interesting story or a comment. I will say we did receive an email from someone I do believe is Gyoza Guzzler. So
hell yeah.
Gyoza Guzzler lives. I don't want to lean too much into it because I kind of want Gyoza Guzzler to be allowed to, maintain cryptid status. But we did get, so Gyoza Guzzler, I saw your email, shouts out. Thank you for whatever that was. I'm going to let that be a mystery. But if people out there want to, send us a story, send us something cool, hit us up, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to support us, and I know you do, check out patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $1 tier, a $2 tier, and a $5 tier. $1 tier is the tip tier. You get to support your favorite show with a little monthly tip. But if you want bonus content, the $2 tier and the $5 tier are going to be the place to go. At the $2 tier, we have It Gets Weird TV. We're right now, dude, something's up with my brain. I think I need to be taken out back and shot like a lame horse. Right now, Niall and I are going through season 3 of the X-Files. We're, I want to say, a little over halfway through. It's been a blast, and people get to vote on what show we watch next. Could be season 4 of the X-Files, could be a completely different show. We'll see. But then we have the $5 tier. And at the $5 tier, you get another bonus show in the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV. This is World of Weird. Niall and I talk about whatever the hell we want, and it's a lot of fun. We talk a lot of movies, a lot of music, a lot of thoughts on a lot of different things. Any subject we're willing to bring to the table. So check it out. Most bang for your buck is going to be that $5 tier. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show on 2 days. Oh my God. I think my brain is starting to melt. I actually think my brain is beginning to melt. The controllers is what finally did it.
Yeah. Okay. Look, it's good to know your limits, and if your limits are a 3-part deep dive into the controllers, then now you know.
You get access to the show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday. 2 days before anybody else gets to hear it. On those $2 tiers and those $5 tiers. So check it out. You also get access to the Discord where we're hanging out, chatting with our listeners just like you. It's a great time. Super secret Discord with a lot of interesting and fun people. So please check out patreon.com/itgetsweird. We could really, we always appreciate more support from the community, but everybody who's, donated to us and supported us so far, thank you so much. If you can't support us monetarily, though, we do understand. Times are tough. But what we would ask you to do is to airdrop our show to random people in bars.
Yep,
that's a great.
That's the new especially for 2026. Yes. That's the new meta.
Or just talk to friends and family who you think might like the show. Talk to your enemies potentially. So I guess what I'm saying is tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for continuing to support the show. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.
Peace.